Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Thank you to our patrons, as always, who make this podcast possible. If you would like to become a brand new patron of this podcast to help support us and keep it going, support the work that we do, maybe potentially buy equipment sometime. We dodged a lot of bullets when we had a flood right here in the studio last week. That's why there was no episode last week. The equipment was all like laid out and drying. We had a toilet right above this desk that the supply line exploded, and I was away, and I got home and I heard this flood like you wouldn't believe, and I knew right away what it was, and came down, and the desk, I mean, there was water pouring over the monitor, the computer monitor, which is right. You can actually see it a little bit in the picture here. The microphones had water gushing over them. The camera, which is a high-end camera, I was using it that week.
Thankfully.
And the water was pouring over the tripod. We probably had, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we had 500 to 1,000 gallons that came
you
in
had
that short
inches of
amount
water
time. There
down
were
here.
literally inches of water.
Inches of water, yes.
So some way, somehow, all of our equipment got spared.
I think God protected
This time.
it. God protected it, that's all. Yes.
But we do, I mean, it is important. This equipment was all purchased, and the only way it was able to be purchased was through our patrons who help support and maintain equipment and keep things going. Right. So we appreciate it, and we thank you guys. Yes. It is much, much needed and much, much appreciated. We're going to continue our fruits tool, going through the 20 different fruits that we identified and helping you to break them open to see what's inside of them so that you're not fooled like the vast majority of other people when an abuser comes your way. So we're going to jump right in. The last one that we talked about in the previous episode was parenting, being that surrogate parent, the one who steps in as the parent the kid never knew.
Yep.
And so this one goes right in line with that. This is lock and step. And this one is discipline. Again, all of these fruits on the outside, it's things that we need. It's things our kids need. All of our kids need discipline. And I'm not talking about harsh discipline here. I am not a proponent of spanking. I'm not a proponent of yelling and intimidation and fear tactics. And I am not in favor of that. But discipline is I guess, better stated as setting boundaries.
Yeah, right. Boundaries are necessary.
And telling kids, like, you can't really cross the street without looking. Our kids, unfortunately, have done that. Thank God it didn't end in tragedy.
Right.
But our kids were disciplined for that, and that was telling them never, ever, ever cross the street without looking, you know? And so discipline. We all need it, but here's what the abuser does. The abuser feels an obligation to offer discipline to a child, not his own, even if it's very slight. He'll talk about the lack of discipline that the child has in his or her home. A common phrase would be something like this. Billy's a good kid. There's that likability that we talked about in the last episode.
Yes.
Billy's a good kid. Parents' ears perk up. Oh my goodness, I feel so flattered. But I had to correct, Y behavior, whatever it was. And so the abuser will manipulate any resistance to disciplining a child, not his own, by turning it into a positive thing. And so he'll say something like this. Johnny's pretty rough around the edges, but boy, is he a quick learner. He responds so well when I talk with him. And using discipline the wolf is grooming the parent to allow him, that is the abuser, to counsel the child in private.
Right.
This is all setting the stage. Again, all of this is trap setting.
It is. And, on the surface, Jimmy, with each one of these fruits, it's difficult at first to really want to even dig beneath the intent. Because we take it for the obvious. Well, that person cares about my child. They're teaching them better manners. They're teaching them how to say please and thank you.
Yeah.
Where, I'm so busy, I'm crazy, going nuts at home. I haven't had time to really do that. But they do it in such a good way, too, that we become very accepting of another person giving our child this gentle discipline.
Yeah. That's right.
And the child responds well, too, because of the likability factor. When somebody says, you are the greatest kid in the world, except you got to remember, you have to say please and thank you. Or take your shoes off when you enter, a friend's home. We don't want to get their floor all sandy and dirty. Or, any number of things that you can think of, until you stop and think, wait a minute, that's my child. That's my
right.
job to do. That's my position to be doing the disciplining. That's my job to spend that alone time teaching my child those things. And
my opinion is this is one of the trickier fruits because there are job positions that require these people to be disciplinaries,
right.
Again, school teacher.
Exactly right.
Principal. I can't think of a whole lot. Daycare worker.
I think of
roles.
Teachers doing rehab with children in hospitals. You have a child who has maybe an inability to do whatever, and you have this person who's the trainer, physical therapist, whatever. They're dealing one-on-one. It's really hard. And if we think that abuse doesn't happen, I always think of your friend. Yep. I think of him and think of what happened to his son, while this gentle person from church was watching him. Committed the worst abuse ever on this child because the child couldn't help himself. But, it happens in any arena where there is a wolf.
Yeah.
I don't care what that arena is. The wolf will find a way and a reason to discipline your child.
Yeah.
So.
And you have to ask yourself this question: Is this person in a position where they're required to discipline? Because, let me give an example of this. Okay, I'm a minister. I'm a preacher. It's not my job to discipline.
Right.
Like, how dare me if I start disciplining other people's kids? It's not my job. It's not my position. It's not in my job description. And quite frankly, I don't get paid enough to discipline other people's kids. I have no desire to.
And
it's not normal. It's not right.
I don't want to. Do I get frustrated with some behavior in children? Absolutely. But I'm not going to step up to that child and that parent on the ball field and say, I don't like how your kid is doing here. Let me take your child for an afternoon and work with your child.
And that's a difference, too, between expressing, if there genuinely is something that's going on, it's different talking to the parent and saying, hey, I want to make you aware that this happened.
That's a big difference.
And then you walk away.
That's a big
There's a difference between that and saying, I had to discipline your kid when you're not when that's not a job requirement.
No.
To say I had to discipline your kid. Johnny's a good boy, but I had to discipline him. Well, the parent's response ought to be, how dare you?
Yeah. That's
discipline
my child.
child.
You need to you could talk to me about it.
That's right.
I will do the disciplining.
But the abuser again will frame it in a way where it just seems so natural and so positive. He frames it in a positive way to where it deflates any wind out of your sail before it even gets there.
And there again, when you're the exhausted parent, and believe me, the wolf can find the exhausted parent, often we'll welcome somebody helping our child.
And thank
direct
them for it.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
Thank you so much. What a great thing that you're
took the interest in my child to make things right.
Yeah. This next one, hygiene. Again,
Yeah.
providing hygiene for children is so important. Man, is this important. But here's where it goes wrong.
Yeah.
The wolf insists on providing personal hygiene for children. He or she will offer, or more likely insist upon, bathing kids and or buying or administering personal hygiene products for the kids. For example, soap, deodorant, tampons, suntan lotion, etc. In private, he's creating sexualized games using hygiene as an excuse, using lotions to massage children, photographing them, forcing them to perform sexually on the abuser, and or producing child sexual explicit images. This is important because
it is. Very.
Because again, it's one thing. This is so important. This distinction is so important. It's one thing to buy soap and deodorant and things like that for a parent of that child, or a foster
Big
parent,
difference,
or a guardian, or somebody who's already caring for that kid, and to say, look, I didn't want to make this a big scene.
Right.
Like, I don't want to embarrass you. But, little Susie said that, she hasn't had a shower or a bath in weeks.
Yep.
And I legitimately want to help you out. And so I bought this stuff, and, you quietly give it to them.
You quietly hand it in a bag, or you sit it on their porch, or whatever.
That's right. What a difference between that, or buying backpacks, school supplies for underprivileged children. What a great, fantastic thing to do for somebody.
Yeah, that is. It is.
What's not great is somebody who is himself or herself taking it upon themselves to bathe your child, or to, offer tampons and teach your daughter, your prepubescent daughter, about her period in private, when it is not their job, it's not their business, it's not. This is stupidity at its finest. It's not somebody else's job to do that for your kid, unless, again, it's in a position at school where they teach sex ed classes or hygiene.
But that's in a group, and that's never going to be alone. Taking that child and showering with that child.
That's exactly right.
I think of Sandusky, and I think of some of the
snapping towels at these kids and showering with them.
Showering with them. No. That is not how it's done at all. And we don't look at that person and say, what a great person. No. That's not within the norm.
That's right.
That's not within normal boundaries at all. And, then I'm glad you added, Jimmy, using lotions to massage.
I wrote about that in my book. That was my dad's. He did all of these.
Yeah.
The bathing, that he was obsessed.
Love
and that was
bathing,
one thing
changing diapers.
Yeah, I know parents in hindsight.
Powdering little butts, making little ones smell good, rubbing the lotion all over them, making their skin feel good. Just not within the boundaries of normal.
Nope, not even close.
No.
Not even close.
No.
But yeah, watch for people who do this, because they're not shy about it. It's not like they're sheepishly, and this is what I hate about this grooming language. I'm not a fan of it, because grooming is always a positive thing. Look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah.
It is never used in a negative sense. And so we talk about abusers grooming their victims, and it's this slow, long process. That's not what they're doing. They're testing both the children and the parent, and this is quick. This happens quick. Within minutes, you could find yourself handing your child over to, believe it or not, handing your child over to be bathed by this
We've heard
abuser.
story after story after story after story now from interviewing people on the podcast of when stuff like this happens, and it is quick and it is
Yeah.
persistent. I'm glad you have that one word on every one
Every
attached
single
to
slide,
every one
yeah.
of these fruits. The persistence is always there, and it's not all often or in fact rarely a bold persistence. It's that soft tugging, and it's a setup stage that just let me do it. Let me.
I was going to say two words, let me.
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
Those
Yeah.
2 words, you
Let
said
me,
it.
yes.
Let me.
Yes.
Let me take your kid. Let me
Yes.
take this burden
Yeah.
away. Let me do this.
Let me show
bathe
your
kid.
child.
Let
Let
me.
me teach your child. Let me take them here. Let me. Yes.
How about let me let you get out of my
Yeah.
face
Exactly.
and
right.
walk away?
Right.
Yeah. All right, here's the next fruit. Can you tell we're wound up?
Well, because we all probably fall for this stuff.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. So the next one is food. Again, can we all agree kids need food to survive?
They need food. They love food, of course.
So here's the difference. The wolf expresses a need to provide meals for kids. He'll take them out to eat or offer to cook with them, especially in the wolf's own place of residence. Oh, let me take your kid over and we'll
Make it a fun afternoon.
me and my buddy
Yeah.
will have fun
Yep.
together, and I
Yep.
have all of my supplies are there and all my food, and I just don't want to drag all that stuff over or use yours and dirty up your kitchen.
Right.
Let me just take your kid over and I'll teach them about cooking, and I'll give them a cooking class, a private cooking class. So beware. I mean, this stuff is so incredibly common. These are not things that are like fringe things that some abusers do. These things are so
Now,
common.
again, let me emphasize that I can think of a lady from church who would take girls in groups over to her kitchen, and it was a fun thing. They'd bake cookies and then take them to a nursing home or whatever, give the cookies away. This is
There was a purpose behind it.
there was
and
a
it was in
purpose
group.
behind it, and this is most likely a one-on-one. Beware of the person who is insistent of let me have one-on-one time
Yep.
with your child. Let me show them.
Yep.
If it's different, it's a lot different when there's a purpose. Like we said, are you going to, what are you baking the cookies for? What are you making the food for? If it's just to feed the child, I think we've all done this, Jimmy. We've dropped off boxes of food that are kid friendly. What can a kid open a lid and eat?
Yeah.
I always think like that. How can a kid feed themselves? Puddings, there are certain soups that are pop them in the microwave. Most kids can do that. That's providing food in a good way.
You bring up a good point here. This just came to mind. All right. Again, I'm gonna jump on my soapbox of grooming and why I think it's just the most ridiculous. I have a big beef with it, and the more I hear all these grooming behaviors, the more they really bother me, because they're not specific enough, and abusers don't do these kinds of things anyway. The vast majority of the abusers don't use the grooming behaviors that you hear about, read about, that advocates train people to watch for these. Abusers don't do this stuff. Handing out candy to the kids, right? That's one of the biggest red flag grooming behaviors.
Yeah.
We have one of our church members who's now a very good friend of mine, who's now deceased. He used to do that.
Right.
He would bring the
Yeah.
kid-friendly food, which wasn't really kid-friendly. it wasn't parent-friendly, we'll put
No.
it that way. It was the boxes of chocolates, usually really expensive stuff, but he would load these boxes full of candy and put these little kids' toys in.
Yeah.
And we have this, it's a glow-in-the-dark Jesus statue that like we got this years ago for my oldest daughter, and we've kept it. It's like an heirloom in the house because it's so funny. It's the cheesiest looking thing. But on multiple occasions, he would either hand these boxes of candy and toys to the kids in church, or would mail them to our house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would look at that and be like, that is such bizarre behavior. That's creepy. That's a red flag.
No.
That's grooming. I read about it. I heard about this at a training.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what he never did.
Spent one-on-one time.
Never.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Never
Right.
invited.
Yep.
Never
Yes.
invited my kids into his home.
There you go.
Never.
Yeah. There
Never
you go.
offered to cook with
there you go.
any,
Right.
not just my kids,
Yeah.
anybody's kids.
Right.
Never.
Right.
Never said, hey, let me take your kid and
Right.
let me, you know,
Right.
never. Never touched kids.
Yes. Exactly.
Never once.
It's a huge difference.
In my
isn't there?
memory bank, never once
Yes.
did I see him pat a kid on the head,
Big difference.
pull a kid in for a
Big
hug.
difference.
Never.
Yeah. Right.
Never, never,
Right.
never. And so what he did, what most people would view as grooming behavior, was not at all.
No, not at all.
He gave candy out to kids, and was just so excited to hand these boxes of candy
I think
to
to
these
him
kids.
it was genuinely fun to see the kids' eyes twinkle when they got that.
And he would
treat
make
from-
comments too, and he'd be
Yeah.
like, he was very blunt. His language was it's pretty rough around the edges, but he'd be like, he'd hand us this box of candy or hand it to our kids, and he'd be like, well, he wouldn't even smile. He'd be like, you're screwed tonight. And he'd walk away, meaning that our kids are going to be bouncing off the walls
sugared
all
up.
night.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
But what's
There's a
fascinating is
difference.
people, the vast majority of people, and I'm talking trained
Yes,
people,
Yes. Would consider.
would look at him as a groomer
Yeah.
and would look at somebody like my dad who invited people into his house and did this kind of
Right,
garbage, would feed them and, bring them meals and, have, take them to McDonald's and, one-on-one and teach them cooking in the house. They would look at my dad as this
Wonderful.
kind-hearted,
A saint.
wonderful,
Yes.
fantastic man. And they would look at my friend as a groomer because they were trained that
Right.
way.
Exactly. Right.
That's
I'm
the
so
problem I
glad-
have.
So glad you brought that out.
That's the
Jimmy.
problem I
So
have with
glad.
that kind of
Yeah,
training.
Exactly.
It does
right.
not work.
No. This is a difference, and once you start, these fruits all are interlinked
Mm-hmm.
in some way. Once you start opening them and look beneath the surface,
Mm-hmm.
that picture, that glaring picture, begins to form. If this person is not an actual abuser, it is still a dangerous person to watch out for.
Exactly.
Because this is not, again, within the norm of the perimeter of what you should do with another person's child.
That's right.
No.
This is
no.
interesting too, and I just remembered this. My dad made a comment not too long ago, within a couple years, but he said he was talking about this handing candy out to kids and toys and gifts and that kind of stuff, and he's like, I gave everybody gifts, and he's like, what's interesting is I never used those presents, those gifts. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But in his words, he said, I never used the gifts and the food and those sorts of things. I never used the candy. I mean, I never used that stuff to groom the
Right.
kids into abuse.
Oh,
He
I
said, you
believe
know
that.
why?
Yeah. Didn't have
Because
to.
people would have looked at me like I'm a creep. So he
Right.
said, I did for other kids what I did for my own kids.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'd buy a present every now and then for other kids, or I'd, give food or whatever, candy, that kind of thing. He's like, I would do that for other kids. And he's like, but here's the difference. And then he launched into this kind of stuff.
Yep.
I would host the
Exactly.
private
Right.
food parties.
Right.
And he said, that I was using to abuse the kids.
The private birthday party. Go buy the cute little decorations and the princess crown and all of that. Yeah.
So we need to know how to
Right.
really wade
Crack
through this
open
stuff,
the- right,
And
yeah.
and look at these. I'm just looking at the clock
Time.
here. Okay, we have
Okay.
time, I think, for one more anyway.
Okay.
Okay, play. This is the fruit of play. Again, kids need to play, and I'm not talking on a device where that becomes their
Right,
babysitter. I'm
right.
talking about actual
Yeah.
physical
Interaction. Yeah.
and interaction with adults. How do you know that this one's rotten? Well, here we go. The wolf likes to play games with kids especially games that involve physical contact of any kind.
Yep.
It seems innocent to the untrained eye, but for the wolf, he or she is building trust with kids while literally groping them.
Yep.
Common games are spraying silly string, where you can like rub it in their hair.
Yep.
Let me get that off of you.
Yes.
And I'm not talking just silly string, because we did that out at your
Right,
place not
yeah.
that long ago. We had a
Yeah.
silly string battle for an event that we planned. We planned a glow night with glow sticks.
I'm
and
laughing because that was a nightmare.
It was.
Funny
But-
one. Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is not silly string and contact sports, but normalizing things where they're on the ground wrestling with kids.
Right.
All of a sudden, they're in this compromised position, and they do it right in front of you. It seems innocent to the untrained. I'll read this again. It seems innocent to the untrained eye, but for the wolf, he's building trust with kids while literally groping them. These common games, again, they're spraying silly string, body paints or tattoos, whipping games, watching movies together can even be, considered play. At least I would classify that as play. Contact sports, football, wrestling, piggyback rides, hide and seek, Twister, any game that is sexually suggestive or involves partial or total removal of clothing at some point. These are the things that I'm talking about.
And I cannot tell you the number of women who have emailed me, talked to me, let me know that this was the beginning of them understanding that this person was abusing them, was just from this contact playing, that there would be, it started out as slight touching, but then it progressed, and these games would, they're fun when you do stuff with kids. You throw a ball and you drop the ball, and then you'll see a kid drop down to the floor, but when an adult goes flying on top of that child and start wrestling, tickling all over, and
That's
then,
right.
Doing things like that. And then they would tell me, then the touching became more than touching. If I do like that to you, or I go, come on, or I tag you like that, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But when I touch in different areas of your body, there is something wrong. And
Yes.
it often begins with young children, but this can go on actually to preteens and teens, where it's hands up the shirt.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I'm going to talk about that here in a second, because this is really important. I want to finish this paragraph here, and then what you said just brought up another thing that I thought of. The wolf always exhibits an air of positivity, and he knows how to use humor to lighten any situation. The wolf makes anyone feel at ease, and so this fruit makes it almost impossible to be upset with or to question him. He's a person that you want to be around. You see the kids having fun. They're laughing. They're,
Absolutely.
and besides...
and engaging in
That's right.
Something other than playing on the...
And you as a parent are right there. So you're
watching it, laughing.
Yeah,
you're laughing. You're
I'm
having
watching
fun.
them play sports, and they're,
Exactly. Right.
they would never do anything in front of
Right.
me. And besides, I'm keeping an eye on my kid.
Right.
I'm watching my kid. So here's how I train people to watch for it. And I did a training at a Christian camp before, and camps are breeding grounds for this kind of stuff. Camps are one of the most, I think, dangerous places to send your kids if your kid is untrained.
Yep.
Wildly dangerous, because of the normalization of these kinds of contact sports
it's
and
the open
games.
showers, contact sports, the whole...
Having a counselor in a cabin with a kid.
Oh,
that's,
my gosh, yes.
No
yes.
supervision whatsoever.
Right. Yep.
On and on and on and on. And so I did a training. I was invited to do a training at a Christian camp, and of course my area of expertise is abuse in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly common. And so, we did this. I was asked to not do a lecture.
Okay.
The person who invited me said, I want you to show people how abuse happens. Well, this is incredibly challenging, because abuse is by nature not benign. It's malignant, right? It involves inappropriate touching,
Right.
crossing boundaries of all kinds. And so I had to be really creative in the way that I was going to demonstrate to people that you can get away with all kinds of stuff in front of other people. So what I did is, I talked to my wife beforehand. I talked to the director of the camp who invited me to come. And so, we kind of talked about what I was going to do in really benign ways. And so I got volunteers, a handful of volunteers, both male and female, who were not abuse survivors. I was very specific.
Right.
I do not,
Right.
and you don't have to tell me whether you were abused or not.
Yeah.
Just don't volunteer if you have any kind of abuse
Right.
in your background, period. Just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there were kind of perimeters for that. And then I talked to them and told them how I was going to be touching them and in what ways, and asked for their permission. Is this okay with you? And everybody agreed to it, my group of volunteers. And so what I did is, and these volunteers were adults.
Okay.
So I want to make that clear too.
Yeah.
They were staffers, and the people I was training were their peers. They were all staffers who I was training before the kids came to the camp.
Okay.
Okay,
That's a good idea, by the way, having a training like this prior to
it was the best
sessions.
training that I've ever done.
It really is. That's a great idea.
This was the most, I think, beneficial for those people, and it was helpful for me to really think through these things. But what we did is they were doing transitions from like one sport to the next sport, and so I was there on the day that their staff training was all about the sports, which was perfect for me.
Absolutely.
And so, I may have talked about this in another episode, but I think it's worth bringing up again. So what I did with one volunteer at the first station, and I'll still will never forget this. I just made a comment and made it loud. I was right in front of other staff, and I said, "You're really pretty." And nobody, I was shocked, and I was like, "Really?" No, I literally prepped you people, and nobody's.
It was a compliment.
Nobody noticed. Nobody said anything.
Right?
And so then, I took this was a female and she had braids, and so I touched just the tops of her braids, and was like, "I'm gonna play with your hair." And so then I let go, and I obviously didn't stroke her hair or do anything like that. So, very clear perimeters. And so I talked to her while we were in that situation. I said, "What's going through your mind right now?" And she's like, "I'm actually in shock right now." She's like, I physically am almost paralyzed. She's like, "I wanted to yell out and tell somebody, like, hey, he's doing this stuff over here." And she's like, "But I couldn't." And she said, what's shocking to me is that they're looking right at you while you're doing this. And you're saying it so loud.
Right.
That I know they heard you.
But nobody said
That's
anything.
right.
Nobody.
And so then I called the group together. It was like, okay, break right there in the moment. And I said, "What are you guys thinking?" I was like, "Did you guys see anything or hear anything that was off?" Do you know not one person heard me make that comment? And here's why. Here's the science behind it. They weren't expecting somebody.
You got it. I'm so glad
to
you
say
said
something
that.
that was inappropriate or off color or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so they didn't hear it. And the brain gets tricked when we're not trained to hear these things. Our brain, science takes over.
A big nugget of information. I am so guilty of that.
Yeah.
Because if I know you and like you, I trust you.
Yeah.
And I am not going to expect anything
That's right.
but nice
That's exactly
things,
right.
actions and words to come from you. I am not looking for it. I won't hear it.
Yeah.
And I mean it if that happens to me.
Yeah.
Somebody else, they can say later, "Didn't you hear so and so say that?" No.
Well, I was really careful, so with one of my male volunteers, and this one guy towered over me. I'm 6 foot tall, and he towered over me. So, and they called him, I think his nickname was like Teddy Bear or something like that. So we go to the next station, and I was like, all right, if I'm gonna hug somebody, it'll be a male, just for a host of reasons. And so I come up, and I give him this big hug, and I mean, again, right in front of the other staff.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, Teddy Bear, I feel like you need a hug. And that was it. Then I released, and it wasn't a weird hug or gross hug or anything. It was gave him a front hug.
Yeah.
And so again, I called the staff together and I was like, okay, did anybody see anything this time? And they were like, no. And they were literally standing right in front of us.
Yeah.
Not one person saw me hug these two full-grown men.
Not expecting it.
Nobody saw us hug. And so towards the end of the day, though, I'm telling you, like, I couldn't breathe without people. Yeah. And because they were trained to.
Right.
And so in my mind, I was thinking, like, if they don't see this happening, because they're not expecting something as benign as a hug or like a tug on a pigtail or something like that, if they're not seeing that because that's out of the realm of normal, that's especially true for groping, grabbing. You can do what, and that's how Jerry Sandusky got away with full on.
You got it. With the parent right
full
there.
Full on abuse with the parent as he's talking to the parent.
Yep.
It's not like the parents were, in another room or were on their phone. No. They were right there watching Larry Nassar, talking to him,
isn't it, Jimmy?
As he's doing this abuse.
It's frightening.
It's science.
It's frightening. And to the person that it happens to, it is paralyzing.
Absolutely.
And then when the groping is over, you're questioning yourself, did that really happen like that? Because nobody else said anything. Right. Nobody said anything. Did it really happen?
And that was the female volunteer. She's like, I can't believe, when we were like right there in the moment, she's like, I can't believe nobody's saying anything. Right. She's like, you literally just had a talk and said, watch me.
But
watch for anything that I do.
And I think you're waiting for somebody to say something. If you notice right away, but when nobody does, then that question is, well, did I really feel it that way? Did that person really do that to me?
That's right.
Did they really touch me there? Did they really grab me there?
Yeah.
And
so, again, like in really benign ways, if people don't even see that, when there's something that's really inappropriate, the grope, the grab, the touching over the private areas, whatever it is, quite literally, abusers can do whatever they want right in front of you as a parent, and you will not see it unless you train your mind to see it.
A friend of ours, I've probably never told you this, but she said, you are the very first person I'm telling about my abuse. As a little girl, we always dressed in dresses to go to church. And she said, my parents always invited this lonely man, older man, over for lunch after church. As Mom was in the kitchen fixing dinner, I would sit in the living room. He would pick me up and put me on his lap and talk to my dad. And as he was doing that, his fingers were up her,
that's right,
right in front of her father. And she said, number one, it was a total shock to her as a little girl, and you don't understand. You don't know.
That's right.
And her dad's sitting there, so without her dad saying something, she said, I didn't know what was going on till I got older and could figure out about this guy.
And it really messes with people too, because in the kid's mind, they're thinking, why is my daddy seeing this and he's not saying anything? Why is my dad
not saying anything? Yeah.
Even if she doesn't know it's sexual, because she doesn't have the capacity to, they know it's uncomfortable and they know that it doesn't feel right.
Exactly. And that's how she explained it to me.
And so
it really, it has affected all of her married life.
So abuse survivors live with this because they're like, I've known survivors who, their parents died with them hating their parents because their parents witnessed this abuse and never did anything. And it's this aha moment. When I do trainings, they're like, oh my goodness. And then it's this big, huge, almost, for a lot, it's a relief because they're like, I thought my parents didn't care.
Right. They simply
That's not true. They didn't see it.
Yes.
So, the play thing, for me, that is a biggie.
It's huge.
That's
it
a
is.
huge one. We don't allow adults to play sports with our kids.
There should be none of this silly tickling
horseplay.
or
We don't allow
any
it.
of that. No.
Whether we're there or not.
No.
That is a
exactly
no.
right.
Hard no.
Right.
Anyway, we're going to stop with that fruit.
Okay.
We're kind of past our time here, so thank you guys again for tuning in to this episode. We have 3 more fruits, and then we'll kind of wrap that up and show you kind of in a brief summary, how do you take these things and how do you actually apply that. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, I hope this is incredibly helpful, and we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.